Head over to patreon.com/MWilliamPhelps and sign up for my free content page, where I'll be interacting with you, doing live streams, posting exclusive content, and dropping a major limited series podcast exclusively for Patreon members. That's patreon.com/MWilliamPhelps. patreon.com/MWilliamPhelps. It's July 1994, Seattle. A 14-year-old girl is heading to the bus stop after a morning of summer school. She has no idea a sociopath is watching, stalking, and obsessing over her. When she doesn't arrive home later that day, police begin a search, which will take 30 years to resolve. My name is M. William Phelps. I'm an investigative journalist and the true crime author of dozens of true crime books. I've dedicated the past 25 years of my life to helping families of the missing and murdered. Join me. We're crossing the line. One thing about school I feared perhaps more than anything else was being sentenced. And that is the appropriate word to summer school. It never happened in my case, but I came very close. I do recall friends, however, having been told near the end of the school year that in order to pass through to the next grade, they'd have to spend their summer mornings in the classroom. Pure hell. What a crushing blow that is. Dismantling any plans you had for that summer. On July 18th, 1994, 14-year-old Tanya Marie Frazier is sitting in summer school class at Meany Middle School in downtown Seattle, the Capitol Hill neighborhood. Tanya is in between her junior high and freshman year in high school, slated to start the 9th grade that fall after completing summer school classes. She's a busy girl. Attending St. Clement's Episcopal Church in the Mount Baker section of the city isn't something Tanya does because she is ordered by her parents. Tanya kind of lives the values shared from the pulpit on Sundays. She'd just taken a job working for the Chicken Soup Brigade, a group delivering meals to those who need the help the most. She has been working for about 2 weeks and is eagerly anticipating her first paycheck. She can hardly wait. One of the first things Tanya is planning to buy is a pager. If my younger listeners don't know what that is, a pager, sometimes called a beeper, is a small device you kind of wore on your hip. And if someone wanted to get a hold of you, they'd call into a number, which would then trigger the device to beep with the number displayed across a small screen so you can call them as soon as possible. Tanya has even promised her sister she'd buy her a pager as well. Tanya's sister later says she and Tanya were inseparable, did everything together, and considered themselves best friends. To know Tanya was to love her is a saying attached to the young 14-year-old girl. She is just that kind of kid. Everyone loves her, wants to be near her. On that hot afternoon of July 18th, after summer school ends, Tanya is planning to go to work and then meet up with her sister, who is 2 years younger and a good friend of hers. Tanya told them right after she got out of the soup kitchen she'd see them. That first paycheck, of course, on her mind. If we are using Lake Union or the infamous Space Needle as a reference, the Capitol Hill area of Seattle is east, where Volunteer Park and the Water Tower Observation Deck are located. There are walking trails and clubs, coffee shops, of course, and the Asian Art Museum. The 90s in Seattle were known for the grunge music scene, and Capitol Hill is the hub in that regard. So Tanya gets out of school near 11 a.m., walks to the bus stop just up the block, and waits. The bus stop is on 23rd East and East John Street. It's a busy area, lots of people walking about, not to mention cars whizzing by at that time of the day. People recall Tanya because of her smile. She had this magnetic, engaging grin that spoke to how deeply confident and happy she was on the inside. We all knew people like this, and perhaps still do. They possess this sort of inner peace and happiness exuding from their pores, and you just cannot help but to be swept up in it yourself when you're around them. 1994 in Seattle was a marquee year in many respects. By the time July came around, when Tanya is in summer school, it had not yet been 3 months since the death of iconic Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain, a suicide that profoundly affected not only the Seattle music scene, but the city and country. Amazon was established in Seattle that same year. And one fact I found fascinating because I am a baseball fan, Alex Rodriguez, just 18 years old, made his major league debut in 1994 for the Seattle Mariners. Later that afternoon, as Tanya's sister and her friend wait, they begin to wonder where Tanya is. It's early evening and there is no sign of her. Soon, they go to the soup kitchen and are told that Tanya failed to show up for work, which is very odd, very much unlike her. The thing about Tanya is that although she has that engaging smile drawing you in, she is shy. And unless she knows you, she will not make the first move of saying hello. A kid who keeps to herself. The other thing many in her life say about her is how responsible Tanya is. She says she'll be somewhere, do something, consider it done. Which is why her family and friends are so alarmed when, as the evening drags on, she is nowhere to be found. Tanya's mother's boyfriend had told Tanya's sister that she could not go meet Tanya at her job, which wasn't far from where Tanya lived. Tanya was expected home by 4 p.m. that day. And the 3 girls, Tanya, her friend, and sister, were slated to meet up with a few boys. By 6 p.m., when Tanya fails to come home and nobody has heard from her, her mother decides to call the police to see what they can do. As I said, Tanya is responsible to the core. If she wasn't home and didn't show up for work, something is dreadfully wrong. The Seattle police tell Tanya's mother she probably went off somewhere by herself, or, of course, the go-to, she ran away. And they encourage the mother to call back before midnight if nobody hears from her. This is where I have a problem. These are crucial moments. You call the cops at 6 and they say wait 4 or 5 more hours. Well, those hours could mean everything. Life and death, actually. But Tanya's family, now terrified that she has run into some sort of trouble or taken off, is forced to wait. And by 10 p.m., they are calling back and saying Tanya is still missing. When police show up, they go through the standard rigmarole of stupid questions cops are told to ask during these critical moments. Boyfriend? Drugs? Is she in a gang? Could she be pregnant? They are looking for a runaway motive, a reason to pin this on Tanya, who hasn't done anything but disappear. I understand why they do this. But there is a time and place for everything, and getting out and searching for Tanya should be the most important task at hand in that immediate moment. Over the next several days, flyers go up. Have you seen Tanya? Her mother and friends and police are actively searching. Seattle is a big city, but there is one particular section they focus on. Tanya was reportedly seen at the bus stop. But that is where the trail turns cold. So, in theory, she could be anywhere. And Seattle, which has to be on the minds of everyone involved, is at this time known for women, young and old, going missing and winding up on a list of what are several active serial killers in the general region. So there's a lot to think about. There's a lot going on. You can imagine what the family must be going through. They know Tanya would never run off on her own and not call or get hold of a friend. She would never be gone for what is now 2, 3, 4 days without a word. It's just impossible. Convincing cops of this, however, is another matter entirely. So they wait, and they cry, and they pace, and they consider all the worst possible scenarios and marginally hope they are wrong, that Tanya will walk in the door and say sorry, she needed some time to herself. After 5 days, about a mile from the bus stop where Tanya was last seen, an older guy is out walking his dog. He's a Korean war vet, like my late father was, actually. And so he is very much someone who is aware of his surroundings and curious about people and places and where he is at any given time. Near the 2200 block of West Highland Drive, down a short ravine, the man sees something. A horrible scene. A young girl, Tanya, partially clothed and obviously dead. Going back to what I was saying about those crucial moments after a child is reported missing, the medical examiner quickly determines that Tanya had died 2 days after she went missing. So for 2 days, her killer kept her alive and confined somewhere. If you are a police force and you take a call for a missing child, and you go into it right away with the mindset that someone had abducted the child, and it turns out you are wrong and the child ran away, what the hell does it matter? That is my point in these cases. Being wrong about a missing child is not going to hurt anyone. On the other hand, if you go at the case as if time is working against you and somebody has taken the child, you might have a chance. That is all I'm saying. It is quickly determined that Tanya died from blunt force, sharp injuries to her head and neck, and, as you might have guessed, she was sexually assaulted as well. Let's take our first break here. You are listening to Crossing the Line with M. William Phelps. Be back in 1 minute with more. I recently heard something that resonated with me in what we sometimes get into on Crossing the Line. I want to share it with you. I was watching a documentary about a television programmer for the infamous Z Channel in LA back in the late 70s and 80s, the first cable TV movie channel all the major streamers and movie channels of today we now watch modeled their businesses after. This guy had changed the way in which we watch movies. Everyone, from major movie stars to producers, studio heads, and scores of others, loved this guy, respected him, and praised him. His 2 sisters had committed suicide. In the end, he kills his wife, and then he kills himself. They were interviewing one of his best friends and asked him the dreaded question we all think about. Why did he do it? This guy's answer struck me like a blow because we ponder this same question quite often on Crossing the Line. And his answer to the why question was, What does the why matter? What matters is that it happened. There is no why, in other words. There is a reasonable answer as to why sociopaths and psychopaths choose certain people or why they decide to murder them. Sure, they have motivating factors driving them, but it doesn't answer the why part at all, which, as my man in the documentary had said, doesn't matter. Your loved one is gone. The why is unimportant in the scope of giving you any sort of solace or answer. Doesn't matter. And so when I look into a case like this, a 14-year-old who hurt nobody, who loved her family, was loved by her family, had her entire life ahead of her, I cannot focus on the why. I need to focus on justice. That is what we want. We want the person who did this to pay. When we catch him, we can, of course, go into his life and look at the why it happened in that sense of preventing it from happening again. And in this case, as I got deeply into the research, the guy behind it, when you look at him, well, sadly, you could have predicted what he was going to do. And that is the why part of this we should focus on. Because like me, in this case, it will enrage you. Months go by, then a year, then additional years, and there is still no justice for Tanya and her family. It seems that police have not a clue, literally, as to who could have done such a horrible thing. They have evidence in the form of DNA, but it gets them nowhere. It's as if a ghost swooped into town, swiped Tanya up, brutally raped her for 2 days, killed her, and then just dumped her body. When a murder case goes cold, detectives become anxious and bothered by the notion that a killer is walking their streets and getting away with the crime. When that case involves a 14-year-old girl, it changes the tone of the city entirely. This particular case rattles Seattle to its core, perhaps more than even the most notorious serial killer cases of the day. It seems inconceivable that a girl could be held captive for 2 days, alive, raped and murdered, and there is nothing left behind police can tie to the killer. The problem here, as the late 90s give way to the 2000s and even the 2010s, is that technology has not yet caught up with the evidence collected. And it's important we examine this a little bit. What does this actually mean? The science catching up to a case. When most hear that DNA was collected from a crime scene, they just assume that it's one form of DNA, be it saliva, semen, blood, etc. Yet in many cases I have looked at, the problem analysts have is that it could be partial DNA, a combination of DNA, DNA that is contaminated in some form or fashion. So when we see DNA collected from a scene, that could mean any number of situations. What we mean by science catching up with a case is sometimes as simple as a new form of testing that separates the DNA and decontaminates it. Could take 10, 20 years, and you resubmit the DNA and boom, the lab comes back and says, we were able to isolate the DNA into a group and create a profile we can now confidently submit to the databases without having an issue. The other problem could be the amount of DNA collected. Because every time you test DNA, you destroy it. So you have to be careful and choose strategically when to submit, or you could find yourself with the technology to solve your case, but not the specimen of evidence you need. This is all very frustrating to police. Detectives with their heart and soul into a case like Tanya's, it drives them crazy. All the waiting, knowing, obviously, that this guy could have additional victims. Throughout all those years and decades, Seattle detectives develop leads and even suspects, and yet none of it pans out. There is always an obstacle or an alibi or some other reason to rule someone out. The first break comes in 2001, 5 years after Tanya's murder, when the lab confirms they have discovered DNA from what they call an unknown male. So the killer clearly left the evidence behind to identify him. That's a big day for investigators. Trust me, it doesn't always turn out this way. Then, fast forward 17 more years in 2018, as genetic genealogy is having its heyday. Seattle investigators say, why not? And they give it a go. They submit the DNA profile and wait. Nothing happens. No matches, no family tree list of names to start scratching off and homing in on one suspect. But here's the thing. They do not give up. Each new squad of investigators coming into the department picks up the case from the previous and has a go at it. New eyes, new minds, fresh theories. Still, nothing happens. One important finding in the case turns out to have happened actually several months after Tanya's murder. A woman was walking near Longfellow Creek in West Seattle one day when she comes across Tanya's belongings, her clothing, a wallet, and one of her school books. The stuff is kind of hidden in some brush, which means Tanya's killer touched it when he put it there. In 2025, just this year, the old school CODIS network of searching to connect criminals with new and old crimes comes through. They get a hit. And this is a direct hit, a missile strike. The crime lab comes out and says they can connect semen found on Tanya's leg to a guy, and only this particular guy. There is no doubt he is Tanya's killer. And so they work up an arrest warrant and head out to serve it on this piece of garbage. And you will not believe what they find out about the guy. It will be enough to want to make you scream. Not only who he is, where he lives, but what he had done before he ever came across Tanya Frazier. Let's take our final break, come back, and conclude this case. Prepare to be outraged. More Crossing the Line with M. William Phelps in 1 minute. As many longtime listeners know, scumbags come in all sorts of slimy packages. But the one thing that is generally true in this country is that when they face a judge, regardless how vile their crimes, for some asinine reason I will never understand, they always seem to catch a break. A break, mind you, that ultimately leads to innocent people suffering down the road. So now we come to this week's trash. Mark Anthony Russ. Convicted of several violent crimes during the 80s and 90s, Russ was in and out of prison for years and years. Let's take a look at this a bit, shall we? In 1987, Russ attacked his girlfriend, stabbed the poor woman dozens of times in the head, stomach, leg, and crotch. It took 175 stitches in total to close up all of her physical wounds. While she was in the hospital recovering from the attack, Russ phones her and tells her he intends to finish the job when she is released. 4 years later, he is convicted of robbery, telling the employees of the Washington Athletic Club in Seattle he has a gun. Russ robs the place and is later caught. 5 years after that, Russ breaks into a home and attempts to rape a woman. He brandishes a knife to the house cleaner, steals her money, demands to be shown where all the jewelry in the house is, and then tells her he is going to rape her. She talks him out of it, saying she was on her period. Investigating that case, detectives see a pattern in the area and suspect Russ to be responsible for those as well. He is convicted of that offense and his case falls under the third strike ruling. He is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The state legislature then removes robbery from the list of crimes included in the three-strike law, and so Russ is spared. So he is released after serving just part of his time, no longer considered a three-striker and doing life. Isn't that special? The bus stop where Tanya was waiting for the bus on that day she went missing just happened to be across the street from Russ's mother's house. And so he saw her, he used a ruse to convince her he was a good guy and abducted her, and then viciously raped and beat and stabbed and murdered her. I have no words to describe the contempt I feel for the judges who allowed this animal to continue to violate laws and people and still walk the streets. He was sentenced to life in prison for crying out loud, but yet out on the streets. You look at his record and you can clearly see that he is progressing, escalating his crimes and on track to commit the most heinous crimes imaginable. Yet you slap him on the wrist time and again and tell him not to be a bad boy anymore. I have no use for these people responsible for this man being out on the street. They should be held accountable in civil court, and I hope Tanya's family sues. Russ is a level 3 sex offender. When they arrested him in November 2025 for Tanya's murder, he was non-compliant with his status as a sex offender, using 4 aliases, hiding from authorities. He says he chose Tanya at random. The King County Prosecutor's Office has Russ's case now, which is considered aggravated murder and rape. Of course, he will be convicted and sentenced to life, about 30 years too late. I want to commend all the investigators who worked on this case over the decades. They never gave up on justice for Tanya's family. And it is because of that determination and empathy and compassion that Russ is in jail now and cannot hurt anyone else. And thank you to the DNA gods for giving us this incredible tool to find the evil in this world and stop them. Tanya's family posted a message on Facebook after the arrest saying, "Tanya's killer has been arrested. Although nothing can make up for losing Tanya, finally, we will have answers and justice." I sure as hell hope so. That'll do it for this week. Be safe, be aware. Sources for this episode include After More Than 30 Years, A Man is Charged in Seattle Girls Killing by Mark Walker, The New York Times, November 8th, 2025. 3 strikes inmate who was released from prison now charged with murder in Seattle Girls Killing by Jeremy Harris, Como News, November 6th, 2025. I also used various court records and arrest affidavits. Crossing the Line is executive produced by M. William Phelps, LLC, and Matthew Valentinus, Mom's Basement Management. Written by me, M. William Phelps. Audio mastering and mixing by Matt Russell. Music by Epidemic Sound. Original music written and performed by Thomas Mooney, Tom Phelps, and Matt Russell.